Hello everybody, so this is another tutorial about some of the stuff we will be looking at in tomorrow on Wednesday's class while we're in the Emerging Technologies lab. You will have a desktop like this, and you probably won't see the icon for the program we're going to use, which is Adobe Premiere Pro, but instead you may see one for what's called the Adobe Creative Cloud, which will look something like this. Now, if you don't see that down here on the taskbar or out on the icons here on the left-hand side of the screen, then you'll go ahead and need to click on the search bar. Again, mine is over here because this is Windows 10, excuse me. You all will be on Windows 11, so that should be in the middle. But if you go ahead and type in Adobe, you'll come up with this as your top result, most likely. We'll go ahead and click on that, and you'll be most likely presented with a dialog window that looks something like this. Now, because an MSU has a bunch of students enrolled accounts, all of you technically have free access to Adobe, but you will need to sign in through your NMSU email. And you may notice that none of those options are here, so we need to view more, and we'll have to click and go through the Microsoft because all of the NMSU accounts are technically through Microsoft Outlook. So we'll go ahead and click on that, and that will be our way into the software. So while that's happening, it will pull up a internet window looking like this, and it already signed me in for it. Well, because I already have stuff signed in on here. But what you will actually need to do is it will ask you to go through and sign in with your NMSU email and password. It will then most likely ask you for two-factor authentication. My computer is just smarter than I am, so it did all that for me. But when you're on this window, it will then give you this screen once you're done logging in and you've, given the code on your phone or your Microsoft Authenticator, whatever it happens to be, and then we can go ahead and close this out, but it will open it in another window. Once you have that, it will take you to this screen where you'll see a bunch of other apps and things. We don't need to worry about any of this. We want to go over to the left-hand side where it says Apps. So when we're over on Apps, we'll be able to see that there's a couple different things over on the left-hand side, but the one we want is just Premiere Pro. There are lots of other things here. You all have technically access to all of those. Some of them are really good. Lightroom is fantastic. Photoshop, obviously. Illustrator for illustrations. Acrobat for PDF things. Dreamweaver for designing websites and other online components, but the one we're just looking at for today is Premiere Pro. So when we go to open that, you will see that it will immediately ask us to open a media file. And that's because in order to do anything, we will need an audio file to get started. Now, I've already had this test thing here just to make sure that everything was running smoothly, but we want to open a new project. We'll go ahead and click on this top left thing up here. And then it will take me to kind of a search area where we can select footage and other media to incorporate into our project. Now, on the day of the project, I will go over kind of the specific things that I want you to import and where to grab it from. Those will be up on Canvas, so don't worry too much about those now. But once you have them, you will need to find them most likely under Downloads, because we'll be pulling them off the internet from our home Canvas pages, and you'll need to go ahead and look over there. But I'm already operating under a stock footage folder that I made specifically for this tutorial. So let's go ahead and pick one of these. Let's go with the orange sunset, just because it seems nice. So we have that selected. Let's go ahead and hit create. And we're jumped into this window. Now yours might look slightly different because this one's already adopted some of my preferences. But one thing that you will probably have is over on the left-hand side, you will have a small window about yay big that will give you a bunch of tutorial options. It will say improving your videos or where to get started and stuff like that. We want to get that out of here because it doesn't take up any meaningful space. You can get that back later through some other means, which we'll go over right now. First thing you want to do is where that little window is, you want to click on the three little lines here. You will notice, before we do anything further, that each one of these windows all have some of those three little lines. That is the menu option that will allow you to get rid of things, move stuff around. In this case, you will want to go ahead and click on the close panel for that tutorial box over on the left-hand side. All right, now you will have a couple other things as well. Probably the source clips, which will be on the left-hand side here, and let's actually go ahead and move that. It will probably look something like this once everything's done. Now, how did I do that? And all right, actually, before we get into that, let's talk about saving, because that's the most important thing that you can possibly do, is always save your work, because if you don't, it will inevitably at some point, everything will crash and you will lose it all if you haven't done it. So if you've seen the Audacity tutorial already, then the same kind of song and dance. We go up to File up here on the top left, and then we want to go down to Save or Save As. Save and Save As, those are essentially the same thing at this point. Save As will just let you rename it as a different file if you need to, and also save it as a copy. But we're just interested in saving. So let's go ahead and hit Save. And this will save it as the title file up here. It will just save as untitled. It will give you an option to name it later on and rename it. Or if you want to save it as an alternative file, you can obviously save as, and it'll give us the location of a bunch of other things here. Okay, now that we have that, though, let's talk about these windows, because these are some of the principal things and ways that we can organize what we're looking at. Because we have this, which is talking about the source clips. So if I were to drag the source clip up here, I can see that as a point of reference. So if we're doing color grading or editing or skewing or doing a bunch of stuff with the footage, we can see how it looks originally and then what we've done to it later on. But this, we're not super interested in that. So what we're going to do is you can go up to the top here, and you will notice where my cursor is. It turned into a little black arrow with a little small rectangle next to it. When we have that, that means that we've selected kind of the actual window itself. We're not looking at the video, we're not pressing play, we're not doing anything like that. We're actually looking at the window. So when we have that, and we grab it, you will notice it'll give us this kind of weird little box if we try to drag it over to another window here. So it doesn't matter where on the screen I do it, depending on where I am, it will always give us these kind of options. Now, what do all these do? So this will kind of combine and re-merge windows together. So if I put it over here on this rightmost section here, this rightmost quadrant, nothing will happen. It will be the exact same thing that we were looking at, because that's relative to where this is or whatever window we're dragging it over. But say I want just this entire window. We have a lot of real estate up here, this big rectangle, and this isn't really helping us because we're not going to be doing anything super fancy with the footage. So maybe I just want to look at just the timeline, the program sequence, which is what we're looking at when we're down here. So if I want to do that, let's go ahead and select the window, and we're going to bring it over to the main page here. Now this will spread it out and make both of these windows kind of merge together into one so that we just have our viewing window. There we go. That's all we want for the space. But if we ever want to do something or add another one, we can always go up to our tab here. And again, when we have this, actually, yeah, we can just click on it. We can go back to where we were before. So nothing is irreversible. We can always get back to where we want to be. And if for whatever reason I go, oops, I accidentally closed the wrong panel, and now we're on the source page, and oh no, if I hit play and other things on this timeline, it's not moving. Everything's broken. What do I do? We can fix that by clicking on the window where we want to open a new window, a new workspace. We can go to Window up here, and we can go down to Program Monitor. And when we have that, we'll talk about the program sequence, and now we can see what's on our timeline again. But you can see that they're still in the same window, because over here we're looking at the source footage. Oh, actually, it just defaults to it. Never mind. Then we're in the clear. But again, we can always go back. We can always go back to this layout if we need to. But let's just stick with this one because this makes things a little simpler. So go ahead, rearrange your windows like I just did so that we just have one window here at the top, because that's all we're interested in for the time being. Okay, now let's talk about importing files, because we have our timeline and stuff down here, and we have all of our footage and whatnot, but realizing that if I were to hit play on this, which we can hit play here or just hit the space bar, there's no sounds, because this is just raw stock footage. There's nothing currently added onto it. It's just the video, and we want maybe something a little bit more. It feels a little bland, so let's go ahead and add some sounds. Now, how do we do that? Because we imported and used this footage, we kind of selected this right when we got started, and there's a couple different ways we can get to adding more stuff without having to start the project over. One of those is we can go up to the Import tab up here, which will take us right back to that same window we had when we first opened the project. Or if we go back to the Edit tab, so again, Import and Edit are up in the top left. If we go back to the Edit tab, we click over on our kind of project, our media browser. So this is where we have everything that we're going to be putting on our timeline here to edit. we want to bring something in, but we don't feel like dragging up to the import tab and then going through all of our documents and stuff here on the left-hand side. Maybe we want to do that more in-house when we're just on the screen. Then we can hit Control-I. When we hit Control-I, it will bring up another import menu, and we can click on other things we want to bring into the project. So since we're kind of at the beach, let's go ahead and open some ocean ambience. And you will see that it's down here in our media pool along with the sequence, which is what we're seeing down here, and then the original footage that we're using all of this from. You will always see a duplicate of footage and assets that are out here, as well as whatever original video they were based on. That's totally normal. That's just how Audacity keeps track of stuff. Or not Audacity, how Adobe keeps track of stuff. But let's go ahead and add our ocean ambience. And we can do that very, very simply by just clicking on this and then dragging it over to our timeline. And it will naturally be a different color so we can easily tell them apart. So we play that. Yeah, now we have a bit of ocean ambience in the background. But it's a little long. And if we are to zoom out, let's actually talk about zooming. There's lots of different hotkeys and things. For this, I'm going to just jump to the simplest ones, and that's going to be the minus key and the plus key up by where the backspace key is. So the two buttons right next to that, minus and plus, are going to zoom in and out of your timeline here. You can also do it over here, I believe. No, they don't. Never mind. I don't know what I'm talking about. But in the timeline, at least, when we're pressing minus and plus, they will zoom in and out on the timeline respectively. So let's see just how long this clip is. All right, we're sitting at around just shy of 12 minutes. It's a little long considering our stock footage is only maybe 8 or 9 seconds long by itself. So we want to cut this down to size. Now, how we want to do that? There's a couple different ways we can. Let's go ahead and zoom back in here. One of the ways that we can do that's, probably the most straightforward is we can use what's called the razor tool. So we can do that in a couple different ways, but the simplest is just to hit the letter C on the keyboard, and you will notice it'll kind of look like a little razor. And if we hover over somewhere on the timeline, then click, it will then cut that asset in half or split it wherever we decided to click. Now, one thing that can be really frustrating is once you're in this tool, it can feel like, okay, how do I get back out? How do I just get to the normal mouse? There's a couple ways of doing that. We can hit V, which is just the selection tool, which will, allow us to just be ye old mouse, and we can, do things again. We can click wherever we want. We don't have to split footage or anything like that. Or if we're going back to the razor tool, we can go over to our sidebar where you can see all of these icons by themselves, so you can always click on them. And our selection tool over here, again, which is V, we can hit that, and then we're back to a regular mouse. So most of those things that you can use will be here over on the left-hand side, and they're very, very handy for that. Most of them you're probably not going to have to worry about. The only one we're going to look at is the type tool, but we'll get to that in a second. Going back to this, now we have our audio, and we have cut it. We have split it in half, so now we can move this and slide it away, or we could delete it, and now we just have exactly the same length of audio that we want. Conversely, one other thing that we can do, so let me undo that, is join through edits. We'll talk about that in a second. But one thing we can do is if we go all the way to the front of our audio clip, so right here at 00, you will notice that there's this little red kind of arrow in brackets. It looks kind of funky. But when we have that on any, asset in our audio or in our timeline, so whether it's the video or we're talking about the audio, if we have that and we click on it, we can drag and inherently kind of crop out wherever we don't want, a clip to end or a clip to begin. So we zoom back out again, you will see that it's slightly shorter. And it's not just that I've moved it over to the side, this is actually a shorter file now. So one of the ways that we can make this is we can obviously split it here if we wanted, but we could go all the way to the end and drag it all the way back here. And then when we zoom back in, it's all the same length. We get the same result either way, but some can be a little more intuitive than others. That way if you don't feel like cutting everything up and then going through and deleting every small thing and then shifting it around, that can get really irksome and it's not very efficient. We don't necessarily want to do that. So one of the other tools we can do is that kind of crop tool where we can slide everything. Slide everything where we want it to be. Now, these are a little small, if you have noticed. We have lots of space here, but we're only using 2 elements right now. It's a bit much. So one of the things we want to do is let's go ahead and get rid of these other video and audio channels. Over here on the left-hand side, all these are channels, and you can stack quite a few of them. In many motion pictures which use this same software, there are, upwards of a dozen video and sound layers all at the same time. There's just lots and lots of things going on. But what we want to do on any video track or audio track we want to get rid of or add, we'll just right-click and then delete track, and then it's gone. And we just do that as many times as we want to kind of narrow things down. But no, we don't want to do that. But yeah, once we have that, now we just have the 2 channels working with one video and one audio, excuse me. But say we want to add another one, we think maybe there's another video text we want to add, we'll just click and add track. Actually, we want to do that up here, excuse me. Yes, and then it will add both a video and audio component for that because oftentimes they get paired together. Now, obviously there's a way to just have one or the other, but for right now, we just want the one video and the one audio. So let's go ahead and just keep it with that. And maybe we want these to be a little bit bigger to be easier to work with. So we can go down here to where we have the joining, kind of the split between the visual and the audio, and drag that, bring that up a little bit, and then go down to the audio, drag that down. Whoop, not that one. There we go. Come on. Come on, friend. There we go. That's what we're trying to do. And the same thing with the video. And now when we zoom all the way in, there, now we can see everything, and we can even see the kind of waveform of the audio here, that we can see all the peaks and valleys of what is actually going on, what actual sound is being pushed through the software when we're working with it. We have all of that, but let's take a look at this audio again, because if we hit play, it's very quiet at the beginning. And we don't have any kind of lead into our video. So maybe we want to move things around so that we start kind of in media res. We start kind of in the middle of the audio where we're already there. It already sounds like the ocean, because it kind of feels incongruous to have, the same visuals, but our sound is changing so rapidly. So let's go ahead and pick a section here. Now, we don't want to do that. Pick a section here. We'll zoom out, and let's just bring our audio in here so that it's not too loud. And then we'll kind of freeform it to the length of our video. Now, if we start here, yeah, that's a little better. It's not pitch perfect, but we're not going for an Oscar anyway. Okay, so now that we have this here, let's go ahead and make sure that we save as well as we should. Again, you can always do this with Control S. I'm just going through the menu because it's a little easier to demonstrate. Yeah, a little dialog box will flash up on the screen if you save. I'll do it again with just Control S for you to see. Yeah, you'll see that. With a project that's this small, that probably won't take more than 2 or 3 seconds. It's very, very short. All right, but now we have our audio clip here. And as you can probably hear, as I'm scrubbing through it, it will give kind of a condensed version of what the sound is and what we're hearing. So it's something to keep in mind. If you are scrubbing through it, you will get everything at, 10 times speed, depending on how fast you're moving. But now that we have this, let's go ahead and take a look at it again. Feels a little abrupt, so maybe we want to have transitions between things. Maybe we want to move some stuff around, or we want this to feel like it's kind of looping. So let's go ahead and just Control C, which in universal parlance is just copy and paste. I'll move over here, copy and paste, and now we have that. Now let's say we want these to kind of fade into each other. We could do, put them together and then do apply default transitions and some other things. Oh, there's not enough frames for that. So let's back off and let's just push it on top of each other. Oh. Actually, I don't think it'll let us do that. Anyway, so we'll have to just work with the normal transitions then. All right, which is a helpful starting point regardless. And let's actually offset this a little bit because then it won't sound exactly the same. But we want to apply default transitions, saying that the transitions will contain repeated frames, that because we're at the very end and beginning of the video, so there's no more material for this to refer to. So let's actually cut that short. Take these two, condense them, or cut them a little bit shorter, put them together, and now when we do this, it should have just a normal transition because we're not borrowing from empty space, because if we have a transition from this end, the end of this clip, to something after, but this clip is only, 8 seconds long, there are no additional frames to provide for that transition, because this video is still going even as it crossfades into this other clip. And we have to have more video to provide that, because if this clip ends just right here, the transition begins, then it just freezes and it looks kind of funky. So we always want to make sure that we give just a little bit of wiggle room, so any clip that comes after it, we can readily see that, like, oh, there's enough space for these clips to bleed into each other. Everything's fine. So if we go ahead and look at this again, we're moving along. Our audio is nice. Nothing too much to write home about, but as we get up to the transition, we'll see that it just crossfades, and our audio moves over seamlessly. All right, very nice. Now, we want to add maybe a little more contextual information here. I'm actually going to move that back up because we don't need that right now. But say we want to put some information or titles on here. Not subtitles, because that's through SRT files, which is something we'll get into more in this unit, but not for right now. So in order to add another, title, maybe we want to have, some kind of caption going up here, we would then need to add back our video channel. I'm going to say, yes, we only want one. We have that here, and then we want to select kind of where we want to inject this in. And the way we're going to add a title is we're going to go all the way up to the top left, go to Graphics and Titles, and just add New Layer. It's very important, because if you go looking for text or something in here, it won't say that. You have to go specifically under New Layer. And we want to go to just text. There's lots of other things. We can put shapes and other gizmos and gadgets, but we're just looking for some text right now. So put that here, and it will give us the text right here smack dab in the middle of the display. And you notice that it's a little off-centered, so we're just going to grab that and move that down towards the middle. Now, one thing that can be a little frustrating is, say we want to make this say something else. Let's just put test. We'll keep it very simple. Now, if I try to move it again, it will just put another dialog box out there, and this can feel very infuriating because you just want to move your new text somewhere else on the screen. Now, you'll notice if you've been paying attention that while we had other tools over here, we're now in the text tool mode. In order to move this, we need to go back to selection. So you can click here, or you can hit V. Either is perfectly fine. They do the same thing. And then we move this back towards the center. Now, for wherever this is on screen, so wherever we have put it, it will be on screen for the remainder, for as long as this graphic is here on the timetable. So this graphic is here for about 5 seconds. So if we play for 5 seconds, and then look at where it is on the timetable, as soon as our little ticker is off, then it also disappears. So depending on how long we want this to be here, so maybe we want it to kind of come and go towards the very end, it will just pop in, and then it will pop out. Maybe that's all we wanted to do. But you notice like these kind of abruptly begins and abruptly ends here. Maybe we want some intro transitions and maybe a fade into our music. It tends to be a little, easier to look at and to listen to. So the ways we're going to do that is we go ahead and make sure we get our little red brackets on either end. So no matter what part of the clip we're looking at, if we're in this one, if we're at this edge of the clip, or even if we're on the audio and we're in the middle here, it doesn't matter. But we're going to focus on just these ends of our little video. We're going to go ahead and right click, apply default transitions, and we'll get that little kind of crossfade patch here letting us know that there is now a fade in. And if we play it back, we can see that there is indeed. And we're going to go ahead and do the same thing with the transitions for the audio. And we can hear that the audio now transitions in. So let's go ahead and add those here at the end. And one thing that's important is whenever you have any of these crossfades, you can adjust their length as well. So we have that kind of same little red bracket, although obviously there's not an arrow in it, there's another crossfade little icon. But if we grab that, we can extend this fade all the way to the end of the clip if we wanted to. So if we put it all the way over here and we then watched it, it takes now the entire length of the clip for that to fade in, which sometimes that's what you want to do. But for us, I think we'll just stick to a short version right here. That also applies to our fade here in the middle. Now, it'll only let us pull it out so far because if we try to pull it any further, again, we don't have enough frames. There's not enough video left to actually provide a transition. We've run out of actual video to use for a transition. So we can only use it up to a point, because if we get there, yeah, that we're still moving. And if we made it really, really short, then we move here, and we're right in the middle. I think I like that a little bit longer, but we don't want that. So we're gonna stretch it out a little bit. And the audio, we don't really notice all that much because it's just white noise. As we've done all this, let's go ahead and hit save. And for the sake of consistency, let's add some transitions to the ends of our little graphic. So we're moving in, test will fade in. And if we cut to the end, test will fade out. All right, all of this is feeling a little bit long though, so let's go ahead and just cut this whole thing down to time. Actually, won't let me do that. But let's go ahead and just take these two. Move those down. Do the same thing here. It's feeling a little long for what we want to do. We'll just apply those transitions again. Scoot our graphic down, and now we have something that's a little more bite-sized. We have our little test that pops in, says hello for a couple seconds. We transition to another shot, then we start fading out of our text, and then we fade out of everything else. Very nice. All right, let's go ahead and make sure that's saved. And now we need to get our beautiful video off of this and actually turn it into a video other people can watch. And for that, we'll need to go up to this tab here, moving from import to edit, and then out to export. And conversely, we can also go to file and go to export down here. All of those are, valid means they will all do the kind of the same thing. But for the sake of ease, because export's already here, we're just going to click and use the export tab. It will take you to a sequence that looks something like this. There's lots of different buttons and knobs, dials, bells, and whistles. We're not interested in any of that. We'll talk a little bit about captions as we get into accessibility things later in Unit 4, but for right now, we're just focused on this little box up here with a couple things that it's talking about. So the first one is we need to make sure that our little video is named correctly. Let's go ahead and add, I'll be a little more festive with that. Let's call Beach Test 1. And let's make sure that we're saving it in the right place. Yes, this is going to be under the test projects in Premiere Pro, so we're going to go ahead and click save. Now we make sure that it's where we want to go. And we want to check either the formats. Most of these are going to be okay. Premiere will allow you to render things up in 4K if your original video source was 4K. Ours is not. This video is only in 1080p, so that's not any concern for us. And then we want to make sure our video file type is what we want it. H.264 is a specific encoding degree. You do not need to know what that is, but it will render it into an MP4 file. There's lots of other things that are in here. You can put as a PNG, a QuickTime file, waveform, Windows Media, etc., etc. All of those have their various uses, but H.264 is the standard. It's pretty good. So we're just going to leave it alone. Now, because our video is not very long, we're going to go ahead over to export. And when we hit that, it will give us this little dialog box, which will give us a real-time indication of where our video is, a little successful message down here in the bottom right. Our footage here, where we have everything, we can see that it has been rendered into our section here. It will say sequence 01. I think it butchered that. Yeah, because I left the tab, so it moved it to something else. But the video is still there, so we just have sequence 1. We click on that. We get our short little video. And it fades out, and we're done. So, as always, make sure you click and save before you exit. Then you'll leave, and you'll have all of those same options here, and then you'll be done. Now, whenever we're done using the software in the lab, we want to make sure that we sign out so that nobody can, take your email and stuff off of this. That would not be good. But once we have signed out, that is all you need to do to get started using using Adobe Premiere Pro for our class. We'll go into other things, and there's lots of other tutorials and stuff you can find online, obviously, but for the purpose of our class, that is all you need to know.